Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience, and apologies again for a delayed start, but we're very excited to warmly welcome you all to this Asia-Pacific Foundation of Canada event on Germany-Canada relations in the changing geopolitical landscape, looking at the Atlantic as well as the Indo-Pacific. My name is Vina Nadjibulla, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Vice President of Research and Strategy here at the Foundation. Thank you so much for so many of you who've joined us in person. Allow me to acknowledge that today's gathering is happening on the territorial, unceded, and ancestral, traditional, and unceded lands of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We're extremely grateful to the Indigenous peoples in Canada for their stewardships of the lands on which we live, work, and play, and are committed to the difficult work of reconciliation. We also have a live stream for this event, so there are folks joining us virtually. Thank you so much, and again, apologies for the delay. We were going to do a number of introductions for the event and hear welcoming remarks from our president, Jeff Nankerville, as well as Ambassador Bellman, Ambassador of Germany to Canada. But recognizing everyone's time, with your permission, I will skip some of those introductory remarks, including my own introductory remarks situating today's discussion. But suffice to say that it's a really important time for us to be having this conversation. Germany and Canada, of course, are longstanding allies. We've been working very closely together in the Euro-Atlantic, and recently both Canada and Germany have been doing much more in the Indo-Pacific. We've had German warships deployed in the region. There is an Indo-Pacific approach that Germany adopted 2 years before Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy, which came out in 2022, and the German approach came out in 2020. Germany also has its first national security strategy. You beat us there again. We're still working on one. And you also have a China strategy that came out in 2023. All of these issues are of relevance to us. I know General Breuer has been speaking about the interconnectedness of the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific theaters. That's a topic that here at the Asia-Pacific Foundation we've been spending a lot of time on, looking at how events in Ukraine particularly have an impact on Taiwan as well as the Korean Peninsula. So all of those are the issues that we're hoping we'll be able to unpack today. And an added extra layer of obviously dynamics that are now happening because of the US president and the changes to the rules-based international order that the US has led for 70 years. So there's no shortage of topics for us to consider, and we're absolutely delighted and honored that Germany's top soldier is here with us today. Thank you very much, General. And I know that we have quite a few others in the room. I won't recognize everyone, but suffice to say that the Consulate Corps from all the European countries are in the room, so that's fantastic. You will be hearing from them hopefully during the question and answer period. You have General's very impressive bio with you already. One thing that really caught my attention was the fact that prior to assuming the command as a General of the Chief of Defense Staff, he also led national effort on COVID, which is a fairly unusual thing, and I hope we'll hear a little bit about that in terms of leadership in a time of crisis. I think we can be learning much from that. In terms of the program, we'll hear first from the General, then we'll have a fireside chat where I'll ask a few questions, and then very quickly we'll bring all of you into the discussion. We do have a light lunch waiting for you after the discussion, so I hope everyone can stay with us despite the slight delay. So without further ado, very warm welcome to you, General. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Believe me, I won't skip my introductory remarks. Vice President, thank you so much. President Nankerville, ladies and gentlemen, this is my first time being on a visit to Canada as a German Chief of Defense, and I think it was about time. The Invictus Games had to come to Canada for me to finally make it here. But now I am here, and seeing this delay, I'm really glad to be here. I had to cross one ocean, only one ocean, as reference to my topic today. It's a privilege for me to address you all, you here today, and thank you very much for the kind invitation. Let me start with an anecdote, and forgive me spending a little bit of time on that. There were, in the good old times of the Cold War, there were 3 generals caught in the vicinity of Moscow and accused of espionage. And it was a British general, it was a French general, and it was a German general. The Russians asked him, okay, sentenced to death, so what is your last wish? And the French general said, well, I would like to have a full-fledged dinner, at least 5 courses, glass of champagne at the beginning, and in the end, nice cognac after the dessert. I said, well, the Russian said it's a little bit expensive, but anyhow, granted. And then they asked the German general, and he said, well, I would like to give a speech, a small address about security issues in the world, nothing big, so 2 up to 3 hours. I have a couple of PowerPoint slides with me. So, and the Russian said, well, it's a strange wish, but anyhow, it's his last wish, so granted. And then they asked the British general, and he said, well, my last wish is kill me before the Germans start. Ladies and gentlemen, in a time of immense geopolitical shifts, the ties between Germany and Canada, and we heard about this, takes on new significance. Today, I have to talk about oceans, heavy seas, storms, and the calm that we call the peace dividend, at least in Europe. The 3 oceans which are bordering Canada symbolize our close partnership and the importance of even closer cooperation. The Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic. And I must admit, during my stay yesterday in Ottawa and in the preparation, I've learned a lot about the last one, the Arctic. Each one of these maritime regions tells a story of connection, tells a story of resilience and opportunities. For Germany, these stories are more important than ever before. We have clearly understood that the world has become a smaller place, a place in which everything is interconnected. This applies in particular to crisis and conflicts, That's why we need to cooperate closely with allies and friends. And that is why I'm here in Canada. And that is also true for the future. Together we build a framework for advancing our shared security interest. And today I invite you to discuss together how we can safeguard this vital spaces. Let's go into the weeds, so to speak, into the seaweeds. About the first ocean, the Pacific. The Pacific is both increasingly important for global security, dynamics, and highly relevant to Germany's national interest as a trading nation. Germany's given Indo-Pacific guidelines highlights the importance of this region where international law, freedom of navigation, and sea lines of communication come together and are under pressure. And we have to deal with this. We have to deal with this pressure. We have to protect this region. We have to uphold the rules-based international order for our values, for securities of our societies. Canada, as a Pacific country, is moving in the same direction, underscoring a shared vision of peace, stability, and prosperity. And it is about time. The rise of China and the complexities of the Indo-Pacific asked for a common approach. Since 2020, Germany has been engaged in the Indo-Pacific. One could ask, Germany? Pacific? Emden? So, I mean, the small cruiser Emden? And probably you know about the story. And I would say, probably yes. Yes, you are right in asking this question, Germany and the Pacific. But nowadays, it is a multilateral and inclusive approach. We have been building and strengthening partnerships with like-minded nations. Our annual Indo-Pacific deployments are a central part of this effort. A task force was a joint force. We had an Army deployment to Talisman Sabre in 2022. Air Force heavy contribution to several exercises in 23. And recently in 24, our Air Force and our Navy were engaged into the Indo-Pacific over several months. In September, the German Navy conducted its first Taiwan Strait transit since 2002. I visited our combat support ship Frankfurt am Main and the frigate Baden-Württemberg on site. And I must say, the tensions in the region were obvious. Our ships were constantly followed by Chinese warships. The signal was clear. Beijing wants to demonstrate strength and power. I know that Canada crosses the Taiwan Strait on a regular basis. All in all, this should not be a big deal. Just the most reasonable way to get from Seoul to Manila, from Japan to the Strait of Singapore. So we should consider it as a normal procedure. Do we have to justify ourselves when we demonstrate freedom of navigation where it is unlawful contested? Ladies and gentlemen, the Indo-Pacific is not a distant theater for us, as it might seem in Germany at first glance. Our economic and well-being, our security are directly linked to the stability of this region. It is a vital arena where Western determination is being tested, and our partnership can demonstrate the power of unity and resolve. The expansion of partnerships in the region is of utmost relevance for us. By harbor visits, by replenishment by sea, by fostering dialogue and engaging in multilateral exercises. With all this, we want to signal our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. Partners, integrated, prepared. In addition, the EU is a relevant maritime actor in the region, for example, with its maritime security strategy or the CRIMARIO, so the CRIMARIO project. You know what it means? It's a critical maritime routes Indo-Pacific. So the EU is working with civilian and military authorities and countries in the Indo-Pacific region, including Japan, Australia, and the US. Germany continues to support to these initiatives, and maybe this could also be of interest for Canada. Coming to the oceans, not 11, coming to the ocean second, coming to the second ocean story, the high north and the Arctic, the polar sea. Here the stakes are as high as the seas are deep, although the Arctic is the shallowest ocean. Currently, climate change is rewriting the map of the Arctic, opening new shipping routes, exposing untapped resources, and intensifying geopolitical competition. The Arctic has changed from a distinct space of cooperation and relatively low conflict to a place of unfolding conflict lines. Shipping in this region will become normal, not tomorrow, but certainly in the years to come, and we have to be prepared. As an Arctic nation, Canada is uniquely positioned to lead, and Germany stands ready to support. In view of Russian and Chinese military buildup and melting ice, this region is also for us taking on a new strategic importance. Our updated Arctic policy guidelines from September 24 are a visible policy sign of this. The guidelines encourage international cooperation to maintain peace and stability in this fragile yet vital region. Through a trilateral strategic partnership with Norway and Canada, we can combinedly address Arctic security with greater strength and more and clear purpose. Let us ensure that the Arctic will be a region of peace, governed by cooperation and respect for international law, shoulder to shoulder. From joint exercises to combined maritime surveillance, we can prepare ourselves for the challenges in high north. Finally, the third sailor's yarn story. The Atlantic Ocean is a living bridge between Europe and North America, a natural testament to the strength of our transatlantic partnership. For Europe and North America, for Canada and Germany, this region is a joint area where NATO has been built to protect. It is also a corridor for trade, for culture and communication, and united destiny. It is the artery of the West, the heartbeat of the rule-based international order. Germany's contributions to NATO's enhanced forward presence and our naval deployments in the Atlantic symbolize our unwavering commitment to collective defense. Both Canada and Germany have engaged ourselves in the Baltics. We have deployed forces to all three vulnerable hotspot states, together with the host nations and the framework nations, to secure the Baltics, with Germany, Canada, Great Britain, within Lithuania, in Latvia, and Estonia. We regularly exchange views and coordinate our shared responsibilities on NATO's eastern flank. Canada's leadership in Latvia as a part of NATO's forward land forces demonstrate this steadfast dedication. And at this point, a big thank you and deep respect for the Canadian forces for their outstanding commitment and their leadership in this region. This is where the transatlantic bond is woven most strongly. And together we must ensure that the Atlantic remains a secure and a stable region through joint exercises, through intelligence sharing of highly sensitive data, through maritime security operations, and through interoperability, and more often even interchangeable equipment. The interchangeability is, out of my perspective, the future part. We can talk about interoperability, but the war in Ukraine shows that interchangeability is the future, and we have to deal with this, and we have to prepare ourselves for this. But the Atlantic also represents history, from the convoy routes of World War II to NATO's Cold War deterrence of our alliance. It symbolized also the way from the Pacific to Europe, from Pearl Harbor to D-Day. Today, as the classical threats combine with hybrid threats and cyber attacks testing our defense positions, we must stand united in protecting this vital corridor, ensuring that it continues to serve as a bridge and not a barrier between our nations. Ladies and gentlemen, the oceans three, the three seas, the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Arctic, are distinct in their challenges, but united in their importance. They are bound by the values that Germany and Canada hold dear: democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. These values are worth being defended. Our common goals include strengthening NATO's cohesion with increased allied capabilities, enhancing operational readiness in the Arctic and the High North, countering emerging challenges, including hybrid threats like cyber attacks and disinformation, with addressing climate change as a driver of instability and therefore a direct threat for us all. We have looked at the three oceans that surrounded Canada, their role in world affairs, their relevance. Now, let's look across the Atlantic to my home continent, Europe. I've already explained all three theaters are interconnected. They cannot and they must not be seen separately from one another. Nevertheless, geography naturally remains a factor. And the fire that Russia has ignited in Europe with its attack to Ukraine is burning hot. We feel it in our faces. This is particularly true for the Baltic states, the part of our alliance closest to Russia. With its determination in recent years, NATO has proven here that it sticks together. With its engagement, Canada has proven that the country is a cornerstone of the alliance. I was just talking about that. I have been to Estonia and Latvia the past few days, and I've once again gained the impression of the threat there and of the responsibility we all have on the ground. There's no way around it. We must confront Putin resolutely, and that deterrence works. We must bring credible military force to NATO's eastern flank on the basis of reliable plans. We have come a long way, but we have not reached our goal yet. Ladies and gentlemen, Canada's identity as a nation of three oceans offers a profound lesson for Germany. And it is also a history lesson. And it is a lesson for the future as well. It's a recognition that security is interconnected, that challenges know no borders, and that opportunities arise when nations stand together. In Germany, we have been blessed to experience an exciting moment in history, our reunification. This brought with it the need to think more deeply about our responsibilities in Europe, but also in the world. Germany, as a committed transatlantic partner with clear interests, embraces this lesson. We have understood the story of connection, resilience, and opportunity, and we want to live them. Through strengthened collaboration and shared resolve, we can address the challenges in the Arctic, in the Pacific, and the Atlantic Ocean, ensuring a more secure and stable future for our generation and the generations to come, for our children and grandchildren, for prosperity, for peace, and this is for me the most important, and for freedom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, General, for those opening remarks. And I have to note, especially for those who were able to join us on Monday, we had Vice Admiral Topshee, who also very much spoke about Canada's maritime identity, the interconnectedness of the Arctic, Atlantic, and the Pacific, and also the challenges of particularly the Arctic right now for Canada. So I think we can get into that a little bit, but maybe before we do that, and before we also speak about the Indo-Pacific, which I know would be of interest to a lot of the folks in the audience, could you speak about the general sort of transformation of Germany's strategic and defense thinking and posture that really happened after the Ukraine war? Everybody knows when Chancellor Scholz spoke about this turning point and the generational investment of $100 billion to rebuild Germany's defense and security capabilities. 2 years on, how is that going? What are the challenges? And sort of what are some of the lessons that you are gleaning from this generational shift in posture and your approach to security and defense?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question, and I apologize, but you have to skip lunch, and there is the next 2 hours at least on this question. Well, what we have seen in Germany, we have heard that that someone was waking us up in 2014, but we didn't recognize what was happening there.
We can relate to that in Canada, being slow to wake up.
Yeah, and but in Germany we put the snoozing bottom and pushed it down, and we waited. It was pretty much clear. In 2014, we started to write our white paper. The ambassador knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because we were both in this project team. So we wrote our white paper. We finished it in 2016, and we had the assessment that Russia, since we were surrounded by friends, that Russia would not stand up its own forces quicker than within 8 to 10 years. So it was 2014. Count 8 years. It was 2022. So basically, we knew what was ongoing and was upcoming, but we did not recognize this. Rumsfeld was always talking about the black swans, the unknown unknowns.
Yes.
I think in Germany it's more the unwanted unknowns. So we know and we see what's going on there, but we stick our head in the sand and say it will fade away, it will go away, and we don't have to deal with this. This was the attitude over years and years. And basically, and I have to pass this ball a little bit to Canada, to the US and all the other allies, it was because of our re-education after the Germans' re-education after the Second World War, and it was rightly so. So we pushed away all military aspects, we pushed away all strategy experts, we pushed away all militarism and also Prussianism. So we said, no, Germany should be peaceful. But we also gave up the capability of thinking strategically. And this was the situation, and then after reunification, somebody said, okay, yeah, now you have to go on operations. And we did it. After 2001, after 9/11, before that on the Balkans, then to Afghanistan, then to Mali and all the other hotspots. And we were part of this. But this was a huge step for the German, for the German population. Yeah. And nowadays, then hearing now and seeing what's ongoing with this unprecedented war in Ukraine, Russia's attack against Ukraine, there was again a big shift now. And I couldn't imagine that that a chancellor is standing up in front of the parliament and saying we need 100 billion euro as an extra budget for getting the forces aligned and prepared to this threat. Right. This 100 billion euro, which were dedicated to the forces, it's all in contracts now, and we are waiting for the material coming in. So I think we have to be prepared, and this is my last sentence on this. Sorry, but I think we have to prepare in Europe to be able to fight a war not later than 2029, because we see the building up of Russian forces. We see that they are bringing into play 1,000 to 1,500 main battle tanks each year. If you take it together, we have, with the 5 biggest European NATO nations, we have half of them in stock, so 750 plus, and 300 of those are in Germany. And if you take all this together, and if you see and if you read what Putin is saying, what Medvedev is saying, what Kirill is bringing in, then you see that there's an intention behind or coming together with a build-up of forces. And this is what makes me afraid. This is what scares me a little bit, at least what's making me bringing up this warning that we have to be prepared in 2029. Sorry for this long answer.
No, it's perfect. In general, you're saying that Europe has to be prepared to fight a war with Russia in 2029. Am I understanding?
Yeah, it's not a given that it will happen. But when I see, then it's clear to me that Russia will be is prepared to fight a major war in 5 to 8 years, or this year in 4 to 7 years. And if this is true, then as a military, you have to take a worst case scenario and have to say, okay, we have to be prepared in 4 years. And this is where we are driving our forces to, where we are directing the Bundeswehr, the armed forces in Germany, where we are directing them. So there's no guarantee that Russia will attack, but the possibility and the likelihood is coming together.
It's interesting, General, because this audience would be quite familiar with another date, which is 2027, and an American general mentioning that as a year that President Xi Jinping wants PLA, People's Liberation Army, to have the capabilities to invade and engage with Taiwan. So now you're giving us another date to look into. Yes.
And this is interconnectivity. So when I'm talking about the different theaters, I think we can't see them separately. Yes. We are seeing that they are coming together and that they are coming closer together. And there are possibilities in there, possibilities for our adversaries. There are challenges in there. There are threats in there. So we have to deal with this.
Can you speak a little bit to that? Because obviously, like I said, in 2024, we all sort of started speaking about these complex conflicts being interconnected. Obviously, the war in Ukraine is not just Russia's invasions of Ukraine, but we also have China enabling that war with dual-use technologies. We have North Korean soldiers now fighting on behalf of Russia. We obviously have Iranian drones, so it is internationalized in some sense. But could you speak from Germany's perspective, again, given your national security strategy, your Indo-Pacific engagement, what does that mean practically and how that's shaping your engagement, particularly in the Indo-Pacific?
First, a small anecdote on this. I had the chance to speak with my Israeli counterpart, with General Halevi, in November last year, and we were discussing the events and the starting of this attack, of the Hamas attack on October the 7th. And he said on that day they had all the information, but they were not able to connect the dots. This is what I'm a little bit afraid of when we are talking security policy at the moment. We are seeing it always separately, but are we able to connect those dots? And if we are now looking into this, then we have seen with the security strategy, with the national security strategy in Germany, but also with the follow-on papers, that we have to engage us more, not only in collective defense, not only in crisis response operations, but also with strategies which are strengthening the rules-based international order. And therefore, the Indo-Pacific engagement for us comes naturally. And in having the different engagement on Navy and in the Air Force in there, this is a sign which goes, it's a sign into the region. It's a signal into the region. And what I got back from our engagement there was, hey, you're Germany. If you look at the map, it's not that big. We know you're a huge economic factor. In being here and in having you not only in 1 year, but in a continuous row, this makes a difference. So people in that region understand that there's a reliability behind Germany. And what I see in Europe at the moment is that other countries are approaching us and asking us, okay, can we do it together? So it's a little bit like a snowball growing, and I would say we will see this next year, but we will see this also in the years to come.
Right, so you mentioned that in Europe you're having countries approach you, obviously, Netherlands, France, Italy, others also want to be engaged, Poland in the Indo-Pacific. Concretely speaking, sort of about some of the things that you're doing in the region. Obviously, you mentioned the passage through the Taiwan Strait as an important signal of the fact that you view that as international waters, upholding freedom of navigation in the region being a priority. I also understand you have interests in cybersecurity and doing more with cybersecurity as well as maritime domain awareness. Are there areas for cooperation with Canada in that? Have you begun discussing that with Canadian counterparts around joint exercises or providing joint capability support? What does that look like, if you could share some details?
I could answer very short, yes. So it's exactly what you said. So we have looked into the entire spectrum of what can we do on the military in the military part, and it's exactly this. So doing harbor visits together, having ships exchanging from starting from ammunition over fuel and so on. So bringing this together, doing operations together. So this is not only in the Indo-Pacific area. It's was also with RIMPAC. So the big is it US led?
It is led. Canada has a deputy command, so does Japan. Yeah.
Bringing this together, and for us it was really a chance. And this is exactly what what we have talked yesterday with my Canadian counterpart to get this stronger, to get a stronger cooperation on this as well.
Great. One thing that we have to speak about when we speak about the Indo-Pacific is China, of course, and managing your very complex relationship with China. In your strategy, you noted that China is a partner, a competitor, and a strategic rival. Obviously, historically, when one thinks of Germany and the Indo-Pacific, one thinks of economic engagement and sort of China remains your key trading partner in the region. How are you balancing kind of both the need to obviously engage economically, it's very important for Germany, but also the deterrence challenges, the views that China has, including about your passage through the Taiwan Strait. So if you could share a little bit how the China strategy is actually being implemented. What does that look like in practice? I know you're facing an election, so things may change after February 23rd, but maybe not. So maybe you could speak a little bit about that too.
You're asking a military about a policy strategy, which is basically done in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I'm looking with one eye now always to the ambassador here.
But you were involved in those policy discussions, right?
And this is clear. So let me take my example. I've been 5 or 6 times to China. And we have done it in several levels, and we have done it, for example, also in several courses. So there's a relationship between Germany and China, long-standing, for example, for the exchange of military officers, of high-ranking military officers coming to Germany and going to China. So having this kind of cooperation via military dialogue, for example. The balancing, it's for me it's really important, and it's important not to do the same mistake like we have probably done it with Russia, and always closing at least one eye and saying, okay, yeah, it will be all good.
Right. Because of economic interdependence.
Exactly. So and this is what we have seen over the last couple of years, and I think this is not only what we have seen, but also what we have learned. So when we are now looking into China, when we are looking into that region, when we are looking into the relationship with China, we have in our mind, hey, it's good at the moment and it's okay, but it could get worse. So let's deal with this in a way that we can that we are not directly, or that we don't have not only one road, but that we have the possibility to change in this. So, as a soldier, I would say have a clear surveillance, get the recce on this, and then react in an appropriate way. So keeping flexibility, basically.
So engaging kind of in military-to-military dialogues and then having a flexible approach. One thing that struck me when we had the discussion with senior Canadian, both Navy as well as military folks, is their analysis of the fact that they're noticing that China is engaged in the biggest peacetime military buildup. Certainly Chinese Navy now is the largest in terms of numbers, still slightly behind US in capabilities. And Canadian officials are saying that they don't really know what's the intent behind this kind of mobilization, right? So that they're watching, but they don't know actually, will China use that incredible capability to reinforce a rules-based order, to keep the oceans open, or would it be more for aggressive and assertive engagement? I mean, it was interesting for me to hear our men and women in uniform analyze it in that way, because again, those of us who are civilian, we sort of tend to think that it's unlikely that China is building up those capabilities for the purposes of defending rules-based order. Any thoughts from kind of the German men in uniform?
Of course, and a lot of thoughts about that. So, starting probably with why are you building up forces if you won't use those forces? Of course, you can say, okay, it's because I want to defend myself, and I want to have the possibility of deterrence. But if you look for deterrence, then at the same time you must see someone who's trying to attack you or wants to attack you. So bringing this together, I would say, yeah, it's a kind of keeping flexibility in China and building up forces just to have it in your back pocket, and not only there, to be used later on. And if I remember one of my visits in China, right, and we had the discussion, and somebody told me, hey, they have a different, in China there's a different time horizon. So he said, and this example was very clear to me, he said, well, we are not talking about the French Revolution, because it's not that long ago that we can analyze it. So if you take this into account, then you have a totally different time horizon on this. If there's the need for keeping that time, then you need flexibility as well. And if I would be in the shoes of someone who has to build up a strategy on the military side, I would try to keep my forces together and keep the flexibility which is probably needed later on. So what I'm saying is we have to watch closely what is ongoing there, and of course we have to see that the 100-year anniversary is coming in there, and so on. So all those critical marks which are which in the Chinese perspective play a big role. And bringing those dots again, connecting those dots, then we can probably see what is ongoing there. Also in this case, flexibility.
Right. I mean, obviously there's this strategic approach of connecting dots. Earlier on, you mentioned the investment, the 100 billion euros. My understanding is that runs out in 2028. And of course, there's a lot of conversations about hitting 2%. And I'm asking because here in Canada, we're very familiar with sort of the critique or the desire on the part of the US and other allies to see Canada hit 2% of GDP on military spending. Germany, I believe, has reached that in 2024 and will continue to reach that with this additional funding. But that in order to be able to sustain that, that's about 30 billion euros a year additional that you would need to spend on military. The reason I'm asking all of that is really more for advice for your Canadian counterparts in terms of how to prepare the public for that kind of sustained expenditure. Because we here in Canada are having obviously same discussions as you are on economic priorities, difficulties, cost of living issues, and we know that we need to spend more. There's a demand signal for that, but it's really difficult to figure out how to do that. So any lessons about this kind of change that's happening in Germany?
Well, who am I that I can give lessons to Canada? Definitely not. But I can describe a little bit what happened in Germany. So I try to describe the original situation. Military is not and security policy and strategy is not in the forehead. It's not the first thing Germans think about when we are doing politics. Definitely not. It's about different issues. It was about different issues over the last decades, and I would say basically after the Second World War. There's a big change in Germany. So nowadays, and I have to look to my number man over there, 62%, is this right? And supporting to have more the defense spending in Germany. 62% saying we have to take we have to do more. And you're absolutely right when you're saying, and we are looking into the NATO numbers. So the 2% for me is the absolutely minimum. And this is not because of let's meet numbers, let's meet goals in there. It's because, hey, we have for the next couple of years, we have procured all this material what we need. If we bring this up into the forces, if we field this into the forces, then it's necessary. Then it's clear that also the running cost will raise. Right. So when we are looking into, for example, 2028, we are talking about taking the 2%. We are talking about around about 82 up to 83 billion euro. At the moment, we are with 52 billion euro.
So that's 30 billion. Yeah.
It's exactly the 30 billion, but sticking with this 2%. You can ask, is this enough? Is this good? Is this? And I would say, well, it's necessary because otherwise you will not cope with the running cost, with the increasing running cost. So the 2% for me is not the ceiling. The 2% is really the bottom. And where are we going then? I can't tell you. Because for me, it's not the number, so the percentage of GDP which is behind this. This might be a political number. And it's good to have this political number, to have at least a little bit a lighthouse or a torch where you're running for. For me, it's much more, we have to increase our budget to get capabilities in. And this is the discussion we have to have. And if it is in the end, if it is 3% or 3.5 or 4%, it doesn't matter. We have to have, and it's about time to talk about capabilities and how we are bringing this into the forces. This is much more necessary. In Germany, I hope we will get it straight, and we get an increase of our budget, of our defense spending, which is going over the years. Because otherwise, if we're taking 2028, we will have a steep, increase steep increase in there. And if you have this steep increase, then you will have a discussion in society, basically asking, do we need kindergarten or main battle tanks? And this is very difficult for a society to take on this discussion.
Absolutely. General, I have many other questions, but I'm also conscious that there's a lot of expertise in the room. And I want to maybe turn to folks in the audience to see if you have some questions. There are mics that can come to you, so please raise your hand and introduce yourself, and we'll go from there. I see two right here. So Sebastian, Consul General of Netherlands, and then Farid.
Thank you so much, General. Sebastian Messerschmidt. I'm the Consul General for the Kingdom of the Netherlands here in Vancouver. Very proud of our German-Dutch cooperation, by the way.
Me too. Me too.
Headquarters in Münster. Also sent out to Afghanistan in the ISAF before. If I listen to your story, the message you bring, you say we need more international cooperation. Also for the Strait of Malacca, Strait of Taiwan, to ensure the free seas that our European economy, of course, is dependent on. At the same time, NATO, of course, is under pressure politically from the southern neighbor here, saying, hey, you guys are not spending enough. Yeah. And in the first term, the southern neighbor president said, well, if you don't spend enough, I'm not going to defend you. How do you look at the need for more international cooperation, maybe a bigger role for NATO, also in Asia, perhaps, against the political developments at the moment? And I also know I have the German ambassador here, that it's also a political question, but I also would like to hear the military perspective, also being the son of a military man.
Thank you so much.
So first of all, I'm really grateful for the cooperation, and this cooperation, the Dutch-German cooperation. It's for me it's really it's a beacon of cooperation on the military field, because it's integrated. It's really integrated, and just try to imagine there's a German company in a Dutch battalion, in a German brigade. No, it was the other way around. So in the end, each and every echelon is connected in there. And if you talk to those men and women in the tank, how you're talking to each other, they don't. We are talking like we are doing it. So it's in English or Dutch or German. So it doesn't really matter. It comes together. So it's an integration which is par excellence. It couldn't be better. So I think this is a role model of having a future. Not a European army, but an army of the of Europe or of the European countries in there. So this is really, out of my perspective, a good starting point. And the other political part of the question, well, we have to do both. We have to do one thing without leaving the other aside. In the last years, we always have focused on crisis response operations. We always have focused on our engagement somewhere else. And we neglected that there's also a threat in Europe around us. So we have to do both, and we have to bring it in. And at the same time, we have to do what we have always done. We have to use military also as a diplomatic factor, as one field in policy or in politics where you can steer discussions into a certain direction. And I don't mean that we have to go on war, definitely not. But the cooperation is out of my perspective, is absolutely necessary. Do we need NATO in the Indo-Pacific? I'm not sure about this. So we have an office, a NATO liaison office in Japan now for this region. It's good to have this point in there. What will be NATO's engagement there? So we have to analyze. Yeah, we have to look into. We have to look into what is ongoing in the next couple of years, and what do we see as security challenges arising, and then we have to find the right instrument to deal with it. It could be the EU, it could be NATO, it could be a coalition of like-minded partners. So let's have a look what best fitting to the problem, and not the other way around. Don't build up structures and then, okay, let's try to find out if the problem fits into my structure. If you only have a hammer, then all problems look like nails. I think it was it.
That's true. Fareed?
Thank you, General. My name is Fareed Rohani. I'm the honorary colonel of the British Columbia Regiment. And I have a question from you. You never mentioned anything about energy and what you're importing from the East, so to say, from Russia or Middle East. This is a political economic question. We were faced this week or last week with the threat of tariffs, and energy is one of the big exports that we have from Canada to the United States. And my question is, in the event of war, Europe and Germany maybe in particular would be at the mercy of energy supply. Is the subject of energy from Canada potential for further exploration, or how would you deal with the energy situation in case of conflict?
I haven't mentioned it because there was a German president who was in this room talking about President Köhler, who died last week, and he was talking about economic ties. He was talking about energy, and he was talking about using also military, having interest in using military to defend those interests. He was stepping back 2 weeks later. So I'm very careful. No, I'm not. But I'm taking this into account, because what I'm saying is times have changed, and we've seen this and we have heard this. Of course, there was a big dependence on Russian gas and Russian oil, but this was because it was cheap, and we got our economy up with us. We have understood. We have understood after Nord Stream 2. It took a while, but then we understood. Hey, this dependency of the singular source of energy coming from one country is not good to have, and it's not strategically not wise to have it in that way. So we have to have, you have to be as independent as possible. You have to have diverse sources of energy, I would say, and you have to have the ability to defend those sources. Now, I would say more the transport of those sources into Germany as well. We are very much on the green side of energies. We have turned our completely our economy. I have to be a little bit careful. My wife is in the energy business. What I'm saying now, so she's probably much more suited to answer this question. But we have going into the diversification on this, and I think this is also a kind of resilience which is necessary. I can't answer the question on Canadian energy in Germany, but what I would advocate always from a military perspective, from a military strategy perspective. Don't rely on one source.
Please go ahead. Lady in the front.
Hi.
There's a mic.
My name is Angela Hollinger. I'm director of the Canada-Japan Society of British Columbia. Thank you very much, General. I would like to ask, because our interest in Canada-Japan trade as well, you mentioned and talked about Taiwan. Well, since, of course, I mean, you were aware that Japan's Okinawan region is very, very close to Taiwan, and as well as Senkaku Island, there has been a dispute. So since Mr. Trump's return, I understand that newly formed Japanese foreign minister has been in talk with the counterpart and the secretary. Right? I don't even want to mention his name, but anyways, they, well, Japanese government wanted to know. Of course, I mean, here is the Deputy Consul General was here, but Japanese intention and in question is whether U.S. still consider protecting Japan. And I understand also Russia recently, the information came to light that Russia was going to attack Japan and South Korea, but they changed to Ukraine. And, you know, well, since Japan is not EU or, well, they're in the NATO countries, sort of supportive role, but what is Germany's perspective in these conflict, and if something happens to, you know, well, including Japan from both sides?
Germany's position on a Taiwan contingency.
Yeah, it's would not bring this that close together, because I think there's some wiggling room in there in between. For me, it's what your approach is. We see it from Europe quite opposite, and this does not mean that it's in opposition to what you've said. But the perspective is a different one. So when we look into Ukraine, when we look into the European theater, we said, okay, the US is basically turning their back on us. They are refocusing. They are doing a pivot to the Asia-Pacific. So I think this is from the European perspective. This is it's the same perspective from a different side. If you say, okay, they're committing themselves more in Europe, then it shows out of my perspective two things. We have different theaters and we have to connect them. We can't talk about security. We can't talk about security policy in stovepipes like we have done it before. And the second thing is, well, at the moment, the US is the only big major player. And if we are talking rules-based international order, if we are talking about common values and so on, then there's one big country, and this is your southern neighbor here, which has all the means to be in leadership for this. If we see now the change, then this change is, out of my perspective, it's not moving completely out, but it's more, hey, you have to take on your own security, you have to take on more tasks for your own, you have to get stronger, and taking it back to Europe, you have to build up the European pillar in NATO, you have to be able to defend yourselves, not meaning that the US is not helping on this, but, and this is for me, it's very clear, they won't be playing that role they have done over the last couple of years. And talking in the Indo-Pacific, when you take over a job like I did it in 23, then it's always that you are visiting your closest allies and your partners. Of course, I've been to the US. Of course, I've been to the Netherlands, to France and Great Britain. But also one of my first visits were to Israel, but also after doing the Shangri-La dialogue, then to Japan. So with my Japanese counterpart, we have a connection, we have a relationship. I want to say at least twice a month we are talking to each other. So it's not far away. It's much more comparing notes and conducting together whatever is possible.
And you have 2+2 dialogue with Japan, from what I understand as well, which is great. Canada just had inaugural one with South Korea. We hope to be doing more with the Indo-Pacific in that way as well. I'm conscious of time, but I want to kind of see how many more questions we have, and maybe we can take around. So if we just have those two, let's take both of them together, General, and you can reply afterwards. So please.
Thanks so much. My name is Akshay. I'm the Director of Research Security at the University of British Columbia, which is Canada's second largest university. We have extensive partnerships with Germany, and we're very grateful for that, so thank you. I'm going to shift to a little bit of science and technology and research in the defense space, and that's my question. Last month, the German government indicted 3 individuals on suspicion of espionage for transferring knowledge on naval technologies to the People's Republic of China. And there's a push now, basically an innovation race, for lack of a better term, in terms of where we can collaborate more with our partners on furthering our knowledge base together. I'm curious to hear, where do you see the role of partners like Canada in terms of research and innovation in emerging technologies that you view as being useful in future conflicts? Where do you see those areas of emerging technologies being the most important, and how is Germany investing in those? No small topic, I'm sure, but if you can comment, that would be great.
Wonderful, thanks. And one more question.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ibrahim Rado, a lecturer at the University of British Columbia, who arrived actually from Ukraine after the war. My question is, you mentioned about the possibility that like Germany and its allies may engage war with Russia, maybe in a couple of years. So you need to be prepared. I wonder how it looks like. Like, you mean the Russian attacks on NATO members, or you mean like engaging Russian troops in Ukraine? Because we also know that Macron a couple of times mentioned that French troops may be deployed in Odessa, for example, in Ukraine. So I wonder like how it looks like this. Like what you mean by engaging war with Russia, like in where? NATO members or within Ukraine?
Great, thank you so much.
It's like your kickoff question. You can talk about both
Yes.
questions. I think for
We
hours,
might have
for
to
hours
skip
and
lunch
hours.
to answer those properly. Yes.
Let me take the second question first, if I may. What I see, what we are seeing in Germany, what we're seeing in Europe is that Russia is at the moment they are doing hybrid attacks. I would call them at least taking hybrid influence, and this is. We are pretty much thinking in boxes, at least in Germany and probably in Canada too. We think about peace, crisis, war. Russia is taking this as a continuum. Russia is looking at, and they are already at war. And they're using means which are underneath the threshold of using kinetic means, and they are trying to use it in a way that we see the signals, but normally can't attribute where it comes from.
Gray zone
So
tactics,
exactly,
China is using as well.
Gray zone tactics, and with this gray zone tactics, of course, bringing insecurity into populations, and this is the aim behind it. So if I were Putin, not giving him now via this camera any tips, but if I were a strategy thinker in Russia, I would definitely assess that the unity of European nations, that the unity of NATO nations are the hub of all power, to take a little bit Clausewitz, the hub of all power for the Western societies. And if you find one nation, if you find one country where you can at least drive an edge into this unity, then you will take this country and you will explore it more and more. You will find out where you can dig deeper into it and really bring it to a point where society then saying, okay, probably not more anymore support to Ukraine. Society is saying, okay, no, I don't want to spend more money on defense. Where society is probably saying, okay, yeah, if there is an attack somewhere on one of the NATO countries, it's not that big attack, so we should not view this in the light of Article 5. It will go away, it will fade away. And out of sudden, you are at the cornerstone of NATO. Article 5 for me, it's a cornerstone of NATO. So if we are losing the ability to react unanimously, then NATO is disappearing. And this is much more than if someone would say, okay, I don't bring forces into NATO anymore. I think the unity of NATO is a cornerstone of what we're doing, and you can also take this for the European Union. And at the same time, seeing drones in Germany over those military installations where we are train Ukraine soldiers. When you see the cables in the Baltic Sea cut by an anchor of one of those Russian Shadow Fleet ships, then it's all coming together, and it's all bringing this insecurity into society. To countering this, it's important to have a resilience, and to have this resilience not only on a state level but also on a society level. So this is the absolutely important, and we are trying to raise this more and more. For the second question, or the first question on tech, it's really great chance to talk about technology development. What drives me at the moment, we are looking in Germany. We have and assessing what we see in the Ukraine war, assessing what we see in the Middle East, what we see in the Red Sea. You see that there's a lot of drones, and this is emerged technologies in there. Okay, but we also see that most of the European countries, and especially Germany, has neglected this development over years and years. And we had the discussion in Germany more about should we arm drones or not, instead of seeing the necessity or opportunities behind this. And with this discussion of arming drones or not, we try to influence other nations to follow our example. Well, we failed. One must assess this. If you look into, like I said, Ukraine or somewhere else in the world, you see that everyone is using drones, and that we are, at the moment, we are having a big gap, not only in surveillance drones, not only in attack drones, but also in countering UAS or XS, whatever you take in there. So this will be one of the biggest issues. My question is, at the moment, what is there coming, what we can't see or we will not see at the moment? So what technologies are emerging, and how is for example, artificial intelligence or quantum computing, how is this changing military thinking? To take it really, and like I said, we can talk for hours about this, but taking it in a nutshell, up to, well, couple of years ago, or probably a couple of decades ago, we were talking about military as a driver for development. So if you have a military problem somewhere, if you have a strategical problem, you are looking for a strategy, and you look for means, and you develop means to conduct your strategy, to act within your strategy. I would argue that in the future, probably also today, that technology development will drive our doctrine thinking, our development of doctrines, our strategic thinking, and that out of a sudden it's not a strategic problem which is solved by technology, it's technology which has to be addressed with strategic thinking. And therefore we have to be very, very quick. So this has to come hand in hand. I know it's not a complete answer, but it shows a little bit where at least I'm taking the war fight of the future in.
Absolutely. In general, on that last point, there could be such a long discussion because obviously in Canada, we're also very much interested in how to build dual use technologies and quantum and cyber and other areas where we have excellence in our universities and research, but also which our defense sector is interested in building up the defense industrial base. There could be many more questions, but I want to just wrap up by saying that you raised something really important in one of your final answers about the importance of resilience, not just at the level of government or military, but whole of society. And that is exactly why, in part, our foundation, as a non-governmental organization, is engaging in these kinds of conversations about raising these issues, understanding that the environment has changed. Canadians, probably very similar to Germans, we were extremely privileged in that we got to enjoy the peace dividend since the end of the Cold War. And we're able to really focus our attention on economic prosperity, on economic integration. We pride ourselves, just like Germany, as being an export-oriented economy. We very much depend on trade. We depend on rules-based international order. But of course, a lot of that is now changing, and we need to change our mindsets. And that mindset change has to happen at a societal level and through conversations like this where people, with your experience, I know you don't like speaking about politics, and politics is everywhere now, since both in Germany and Canada that's top of mind, but it's important for us to be engaged in these kinds of interdisciplinary conversations to better understand the challenges that we're facing and also how to address them. So we're incredibly grateful that you took the time to be with us here today. We won't make any jokes about German punctuality. I know my colleagues from Netherlands who are going to make that. But I really am very grateful to the audience, both online and in the room, for being with us for this hour, and of course for the General, Ambassador Bellman, and your entire delegation for taking time to join us here at Asia-Pacific Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It has been a privilege. Thanks a lot.
And before we break for networking lunch, maybe Jeff, if you'd like to give a small token of our appreciation, that's right under the chair there, the gift. Yes. And if you want to say anything, yeah.
So on behalf of our entire team at the Foundation, let me add also a word of thanks to our virtual audience, for all of you in the room for coming, to Vina for doing such an excellent job of moderating the discussion and showing great resilience in the face of our scheduling issues. And for General Breuer, ich möchte nur sagen, dass es eine Ehre und Freude ist für uns, Sie begrüßen zu dürfen heute. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for a frank discussion and bold under the circumstances, I think. And we look forward to more cooperation. This is a time between Canadians and Europeans. It is clearly a very special moment, and we're happy to be advancing that with you today. And Ambassador Bellman and your team, thank you so much for your cooperation as well. And we have something for you from British Columbia.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please join me again.
Thanks. Really pleasure.
Okay. Vielen Dank.